AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Jacky Zhao. Jacky is the Director of Data Science for Truckstop. Jacky, welcome to the show.
JP, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Good, man. It's our pleasure. Glad to have you on. So let's start with yourself, Jacky. Can you talk us through your journey, where you first got started in tech, some of the roles you've held along the way, and take us up to how you become Director of Data Science for Truckstop?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, my name is Jacky Zhao. I'm the Director of Data Science and Analytics at Truckstop.com. So I've built a data science organization at Truckstop from the ground up, and currently today I'm leading a team of statisticians, business intelligence analysts, and machine learning engineers. So my background is a little bit all over the place. I kind of have a very unconventional path to data science. So my background has been primarily in machine learning, industrial engineering, operations research, a couple of Lean Six Sigma here and there, and software development, right? So like I said, my background in college was in industrial engineering and operations research. And I kind of spent the first few years out of college in the semiconductor manufacturing industry, right? So primarily Samsung and Cypress Semiconductor. So my job title at the time was industrial engineer. And this is really when we were still doing data science things before data science sort of became mainstream, right? It became more of a buzzword nowadays. But during that time, right, I spent a lot of time building out data applications, building out data pipelines. And really the goal is to optimize the supply chain. All right, so things like dynamic inventory control, making sure we have enough equipment on hand, but not too many, right? Distribution route optimization, making sure that our semiconductor equipment, it's never idle, but it's also not causing bottlenecks. And then there's predictive maintenance on our equipment to make sure that our machines don't break down, but also ensure that they run at their maximum productivity. Right. So I did this for a couple of years, and that really helped solidify my data background. Conducting research, doing ad hoc analysis, building a project from scratch, from the ground up. But I really wanted to formalize my skill in software development. Right, get a little bit more hands-on experience, because it's one thing to hack together an application, but it's another thing to build scalable, reliable, maintainable software. Right. So what I did next was I found a job as a software development engineer at a large tech consulting firm called Accenture. I sort of worked my way up there, became a senior software engineer, and it really allowed me to learn how to build good, capable, scalable software, right? How to work in an agile environment, how to quickly pivot, how to iterate, and how to deploy super fast, super quickly, right? So that's how I got into software development. And fast forward a few years, I moved to Chicago, and luckily I found a position as a sort of a hybrid role between software engineering and data scientist at a logistics company called Coyote Logistics here in Chicago. So there I was really able to cut my teeth in the world of freight logistics, primarily in trucking logistics. And instantly, I just sort of fell in love with the problems and the opportunities within this industry, right? So in my mind, it's always been that perfect marriage of my two greatest passions, right? One is analytics and the other is in supply chain management. And so that kind of brings me into Truckstop.com. A couple years later, I was tapped to build a data science organization from the ground up. They had data analysts sort of scattered throughout the organization, but never really as a strategic vertical at the company, right? So I was tasked to build that from the ground up, build up that data science and data analytics culture. Today, I currently lead a team of machine learning engineers, statisticians, BI analysts, and the data science team is still fairly young, right? We're still only a year and a half old, but we've been moving so quickly and we've been adding so much tremendous value to both our internal stakeholders as well as our external customers.
Amazing. And thank you so much, Jacky, for the background. It's great to hear you talk us through your journey and how you sort of, took control of the direction you wanted to go and made a conscious decision to move into certain roles and skill sets that would build that foundation, and it's obviously paid dividend now. So you mentioned in your intro you've built Truckstop, the data team, from the ground up. But before talking about your role and how you went about doing that, first of all, tell us who Truckstop are. What are you guys doing? What problems are you solving in the space that you operate in?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just take a step back before I go into what Truckstop does. Let me talk a little bit about the industry that we really operate in, right? Sort of to give our listeners the lay of the land. So we operate in the freight logistics industry, like I said, primarily in the trucking sector. And so these are the large semis that you see on the highway, right? And in that industry, there are really three main players, right? There's the shippers, right? The brokers, and then the carriers. The carriers is just another term for the truck drivers or the truck driving companies, right? The shippers, they're the folks looking to transport products from point A to point B. So you're talking, your Pepsi, your Coca-Cola, they're looking to move products from point A to point B. Next, you have your carriers, aka your truck drivers. They're hired to move products from point A to point B. Right. So the majority of carriers in the United States are actually owner operators. And what that really means is that they just own 1 to 2 trucks, right? So it's a very fragmented industry. Now, in between the shippers and the carriers are brokers, right? These are freight brokers. They're basically primarily the liaison, and they handle a lot of the relationship and the management of the freight, right? So they're the folks to, 1, source the freight to move, 2, find the drivers to move the freight, and 3, manage that transportation journey to ensure that the freight gets there safely and on time. Right? So how does the payment work? The shippers pay the brokers, and the brokers pay the carriers. Right? So on the surface, this is a pretty straightforward problem, right? But if you start peeling back the layers of this onion a little bit, you'll notice that there are a lot of complexities. So I'll just kind of give you a couple examples. So what happens if there are not enough truck drivers in an area, right? And on the flip side of it, what happens if there are too many drivers, right? So simple supply and demand. If you need to haul freight out of Chicago, Illinois, and there's really only 1 driver in Chicago, you're probably going to have to pay that driver more money, right? So if you're a truck driver, would you move a load for broker A for $1,000 or a similar load for broker B for $1,500, right? So anytime there is an imbalance in the supply chain, you start to see fluctuations in the price, right? So it's a marketplace, right? So it's very dynamic. Next, there's seasonalities in place, right? Like anything else. So we just sort of at the tail end of what we call the peak season. Peak season, it's generally more busy because retailers are gearing up for the holiday shopping season, right? So this further adds to the changes and the complexities in the freight prices, as well as being able to find correct drivers and find correct freight for the drivers, right? So a lot of complexities here, a lot of problems and opportunities to solve, right? So this is sort of where Truckstop.com comes in. So we're founded in 1995 as the first online load board. And what we do is we provide digital freight matching in the transportation industry. So in other words, we're a SaaS company. We build software to make it extremely easy for our customers to find freight to move, find carriers to move the freight, understand the market from a pricing and supply and demand standpoint, and then being able to manage that workflow from beginning to end, right? So we started off as a freight matching load board platform, but we've evolved over the years to do so much more, right? To handle everything from insurance to payments to tracking to finding new loads, right? So essentially that's the essence of Truckstop.com.
Yeah. Really good overview, and thank you for taking that step back to give us a context of the industry, because everything you're going to talk about going forward will help make us better understand. So talk to us then about the data science side, the evolution of the business, and as you mentioned, the implementation of data science into this business before the phrase was coined. But can you give us some insight into the specific challenges that you're solving in the industry and how you're utilizing data science to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my team is broken down to different components, right? And we do that to best serve our stakeholders, right? And again, it's both internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders, right? So this is what I like to call the center of excellence approach. And I can talk a little bit more about that later. But as far as our external customers go, we work very, very closely with the product group. And what we try to do is we identify our customers' biggest pain points, right? So at Truckstop.com, we are extremely obsessed with solving problems for our customers and making their lives easier, right? So again, our job really isn't to come up with the most complex, fanciest algorithms, right? At the end of the day, our job is to add value for our customers, right? And data science is just one enabler of that, right? Similar to how software is also an enabler of that. So we build machine learning microservices. We expose them in one of two ways. One, either we integrate them within our existing product lines, or we build out new products for these machine learning microservices. Or two, we expose them as RESTful APIs for our customers. Right? It's what I call machine learning as a service. So it's a subscription-based API that our customers can leverage and take full advantage of the AI and machine learning that we do. So what are some of the examples, some of the problems that we try to solve for? Number one, there's freight pricing forecast. Right? In the example that I sort of gave earlier, where you really only have one driver in Chicago, chances are you're probably going to be paying a premium for that driver, right? So we built a freight pricing forecasting model to be able to forecast and predict the price of a load based off of its attributes. So where's the origin? Where's the destination? What's the pickup time? How heavy is the load? Does it require driver assistance? All those little attributes, they add up and compile into a model that we use to be able to predict at the load level, right? So that way, our customers are then able to better confidently say, I'm willing to take this load for X dollars, or I'm willing to pay you to move this load for Y dollars, right? So that's freight pricing. Next, there's load recommendation as well. So as a driver, if you're running empty, if you're driving an empty truck, you're basically losing money, right? So it's what we call deadhead. So you want to be able to minimize your deadhead, right? Because anytime your trailer and your truck is empty, you're not making money, right? So what we built is a load recommendation engine to look at the driver's historical preferences, look at all the different loads and different types of regions, as well as pickup times that this driver prefers. And we are able to recommend the next load for that particular driver, right? That way, this driver is never driving empty. This driver is always making money, all right? So that's recommending the next load. Next, we have something called route optimization planning. And what that really means is if you're a driver and you're trying to leave out of Chicago Sunday night and you want to be back home to your wife and kids on Saturday morning, we're able to then plan a route for you for the entire week. Right? So that means you don't have to do a lot of the thinking, the searching to see whether or not the price of this load is profitable. We'll make sure that we get you back home at the end of the week, and we'll make sure that we're optimizing for your rate per mile. We're optimizing for your profitability as a driver, right? We also do a bunch of text analysis as well. A lot of times, especially in this industry, people are typing in notes, right? They're typing in notes about the facility, typing in notes about the shipper, the driver, the weather. And there's a lot of really good nuggets of information inside these notes. So we do a lot of text classification on those load notes to sift out the data, pull information that we think are useful, and be able to display and aggregate them in a very concise manner. So those are just a couple of the big points that we're trying to solve for our customers, a couple of items that we've deployed already into production in just a short time, as a data science team.
So that's huge. So you guys are really transforming the industry, and you're bringing data analytics, predictive modeling, and optimization to an industry that because of its size and scale and focus may not have invested in this technology, internally, company by company, or individual driver by driver. So it really is having a profound effect, and I can only imagine the difference in revenue and cost saving and time saving that it can impact from a small business right the way to some of the larger freight organizations. So that's huge. You talked earlier on about the center of excellence approach, and in your intro, you mentioned that you were data person number one at Truckstop. So can you talk us about talk to us about the team growth, how it's evolved, how it grew over time, and how it's currently structured.
To first understand how to build the team, you got to understand data scientists, right? And that's such a loaded term these days, right? So as a previous practitioner, I completely understand that there's no such thing as a data scientist unicorn. You can't expect one person to do the analysis, the DevOps, the scalability, the software engineering, right? So if you kind of take a step back a little bit, you understand that there's really two types of data scientists, right? And you can further break that down to deeper component parts. But type A is the analysis, and type B is the building. So type A, you're looking at folks who are a little bit more experts around statistics, building out forecast models, experimental design, machine learning. So folks with a more quantitative background, right? Next, the type B, the building types. You're looking at folks with more of a software engineering background, being able to put machine learning into production, familiarity and experience with CI/CD, Docker, Kubernetes, serving out models in near real time or batch predictions, right? So knowing that there's type A and type B types of data scientists allows you then to hire appropriately, right? So I mentioned the Center of Excellence structure. In most analytics organizations, they either operate in one of three structures, right? Your first structure is the centralized structure. Centralized, I think it's good in the beginning, but basically it comes at a first come first serve basis, right? Your request and the work that you do comes on a first come first serve base. There's a central data analytics authority, right? So it's good in the sense that it promotes a real sense of identity. There's cohesion, there's growth within the data science department. But the problem with the centralized structure is that you're really pretty far removed from the business problems, right? And what that means is sometimes you end up in rabbit holes. Sometimes you're solving for the wrong problem that the stakeholder's asking for, right? Now, on the flip side of that, there's the distributed structure. The distributed structure just means that there are data scientists or data analysts scattered and siloed across the organization. And they could be in different departments, right? You can have a data scientist in marketing, a data scientist in customer success, a data scientist in product. So the good thing about that is that they really understand their business domain, right? I'm sure no one else besides them can understand the data around their domain. But the problem is there's a lack of standards. There's very little peer review, very little sharing of best practices, and more importantly, very little career growth in this distributed structure, right? So what I decided to do, I opted to take the best of A and B, and I'm calling it the Center of Excellence structure, right? All it really is a centralized analytics organization with embedded analysts, right? And these embedded analysts are embedded into the business functional areas for what we call a tour of duty, right? So they're still reporting to a central organization. They're still accountable to the broader organization, but they have a structured home base. So now they can come together, they can attend stand-ups together, they can share best practices, have code reviews. So there's proper management and governance in place. And then there's also that sense of identity, right? So having that allows you to then better serve your company, better serve your customers and your stakeholders.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And it's great to hear you describe the two different directions and why you chose to take the approach that you've done. So then taking into account your journey thus far and everything you've been involved in, looking at your role now, what you do at Truckstop, what do you love most about your role, about working with data?
Yeah, I think data is the great equalizer. So that's a bit of a loaded statement. So let me try to unpack that with a couple of examples. Number one, I think it enables a lot of the newcomers into any industry, in my opinion, to really hit the ground running, right? Especially in logistics. There's a lot of tribal knowledge in freight logistics, and they're just things that people learn from their many years of experience, right? So don't get me wrong, business domain knowledge is always necessary, but being able to work with data, it sort of brings the barrier to entry down quite a bit. And then the next piece is, I don't know if you heard the term HIPPO before, HIPPO. It stands for highest paid person's opinion. So in the past, I've had a lot of experience with senior management, sort of just making gut-based decisions. But with data, with experimentation, it allows everyone to be more empowered to intelligently make decisions and to iterate with super fast feedback loop. So that's what I love most about data, right? It's the great equalizer.
Great to get your take on that, Jacky, and it's clear that what you love about data is often based on what you've learned through your journey. So I'd love to get your take on that. What you've learned along the way, starting off from the engineering side, working your way up, building a team, and looking back, what advice could you offer to junior people who are just starting on this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So for junior people and for people starting a new organization alike, don't stress too much, right? There's no such thing as a unicorn data scientist, right? And the simple fact is there's only 24 hours in a day. No one can be truly an expert in all the things that make up what we call data science today, right, in the real world. So it's okay to be specialized in 2 to 3 areas and lean on your peers to get the best practices, maybe for engineering, for deployment, and things like that, right? Now, I'm not saying you should pigeonhole yourself, but it is okay to not know everything, right? It's okay to work as a team and to learn from one another and have that healthy balance of quantitative folks as well as engineering folks. The other piece of it I think is really important, and I learned this the hard way. Analytics by itself, it does not replace business domain knowledge, right? That is always going to be important because at the end of the day, right, you need to spend the time upfront understanding the problem that you're trying to solve and understanding the data sets that you're using, right? Sometimes practicality trumps complexity, right? Just because you're using the latest and greatest algorithm doesn't necessarily mean that's the right algorithm for the job, right? Next, you want to know your audience. Communicate effectively, right? Anytime you're giving a presentation with data, make sure you're telling a cohesive story with your analysis, right? So what that means is your audience technical, right? Do they really want to see your code and equations, or are they business oriented? In other words, do they want the takeaways and do they just want the actionable outcomes? Right. So understand your audience. That's one of the key points that I always teach my new hires. Lastly, you want to be consultative. Ask questions, right? Don't just solve for the problem at hand. Really drive at the root cause, right? Again, don't solve for the symptom. Ask questions to figure out what exactly is truly the root cause of the problem. And then for folks who are interviewing for a new company, make sure you ask about their data science journey, right? Everything from going from concept to production. Make sure that they have very fast feedback loops. Make sure that they have rapid iteration and that they can deploy at scale, right? Does your applications and your microservices, do they scale horizontally? Do they scale vertically? Are they using Kubernetes, any sort of orchestration tool? Do they have monitoring in place after it goes in production? And then ask for examples of successes that are currently in production, and then ask for examples of failures that are currently or that was in production, right? So as a junior person or as someone who's interviewing for a data science role, these are a couple of things to really keep in mind, right? Number one, to grow your career, to guide your career at a fast level. And number two, to make sure that you're in an organization at a company that I think are doing the right things to enable your growth.
Super helpful to hear you go through it step by step. A lot of really powerful advice there. Final question for you, Jacky, just to get your take on what you focused on to build your data science team. What are the important things for you that you look for?
So when I was building the data science team, number one, hiring the right people, right? That's having a healthy balance of quantitative data scientists as well as engineering-based data scientists, understanding the data that we have, right? Sometimes we don't need a data science team, right? Maybe a business intelligence team is good enough, right? So ask yourself these questions. Do you have a lot of data at your company? Is your data well organized? Is it clean? Do you have a robust data pipeline, right? Because if the answer is no, for my last two questions, then you probably need a data engineering team more than you need a data science team, right? Or you probably want to have that in place first before you go invest a lot of money in a data science team. Next, you want to ask yourself, does your company promote a culture of data-driven decision-making, right? This stems from the top down, right? So your leaders at the company have to have that mindset and culture of data-driven decision-making, right? So those are definitely all the questions that I like to ask myself anytime I'm starting a data science team or starting a machine learning team. And next, being able to structure your team in a way that makes the most sense, whether that's centralized, whether that's distributed, or whether that's center of excellence.
Jacky, this has been great. There's so much to take from this podcast. Your approach to building a team, your own personal journey, and learning a lot about Truckstop. So really appreciate you coming on taking the time to talk to us about your experience. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, JP, anytime. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for having me on.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.